of creating a union of Caucasian states, and also the issue of mutual recognition by Georgia and Chechen Republic. Today, the heads of the CIS defense organizations met to decide, among other things, the fate of the former voluntary military club. The armed forces will be independent in the future, according to TASS. The Ukrainian Minister of Defense met with a U.S. delegation. Russia is creating plans for its scientific and technology policy, on the basis of which Russia will form its relations with scientists. Today in Moscow there was a meeting of the shareholders of the Oil and Chemical Bank. The people meeting here are very interested in overcoming the crisis in this branch of the economy. They hope for rational investment, which is necessary in these conditions. The founders of the bank are most concerned about this. They are representatives from various organizations in the oil and chemical branch. The government's credit policy should be well thought out. We, the shareholders of this oil and chemical bank, are forced in today's difficulties in the country to move toward a well thought out and effective way of working. Today in the Kremlin, Russian President Boris Yeltsin met with the deputy chairman of the UN Children's Fund UNICEF, who's organizing the children's humanitarian effort here, Mark Venelkiod. His delegation arrived in Moscow to study the problems of children in Russia. UNICEF was created in 1946 to help children in post-war Europe. Now it is helping with various programs in over 100 developing countries. The main areas of activity are healthcare, prenatal care, children's food, education, and professional and technical training for the new generation. Ruslan Khasbulatov was invited to Strasbourg to participate in the meeting of the Council of Europe. He began his day today with a meeting with Mayor Catherine Trotman. The Speaker of the Russian Parliament met the local leaders in the old palace and wished them good luck and prosperity. Since they had no concrete agenda, they talked about general measures about the policies of the Russian President and Parliament. Today, since the Cold War is over and Europe is striving for unity, we cannot remain on the sidelines. We must enter European structures. In the afternoon, the head of the Russian Parliament had a discussion with the Secretary General of the European Council, Catherine Lalumere. They discussed parliamentary relations. It is still difficult to say how these contacts will look in the future. They require serious analysis. This is the international segment of our news program. Today in Geneva, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, spoke to the disarmament conference. In 1968, the countries signed a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. In 1972, a biological weapons treaty. But the negotiations which were going on at that time on chemical weapons were discussed by 40 countries but brought no results then. Genscher now proposes a treaty to prohibit the use of poisonous gases and also their production, acquisition, storage, or possession. Since Germany is now the leader of the Geneva Disarmament Conference, Germany is taking the initiative into its own hands. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the possibility of chemical weapons proliferation has increased, so they are searching for compromise control mechanisms. The main bone of contention in verification is the fact that most of these chemical elements are used in civilian production as well. All chemical production facilities would therefore be subject to verification, and many are opposed to this, including the United States. The fall session of the UN session should approve the agreement, and possibly in the fall, the leaders of the countries will come to Paris for a signing ceremony. This is an optimistic scenario, but Germany is using all of its diplomatic authority and economic power to bring it about. The world at this hour, a video chronicle of international events. Today, the Israeli army entered southern Lebanon moving in the direction of the bases of the terrorist organization Hezbollah. Several days ago, the leader of this organization, Sheikh Mousawi, was killed in an air invasion by Israel. Since then, the Hezbollah has been shelling Israeli population centers in the zone. The provision provisional UN forces here fired warning shots in an attempt to prevent the Israeli troops from entering Lebanon. Over 100,000 people have abandoned their homes. There are casualties at this hour. Observers note that the Israeli military action began several hours after the UN Security Council made an appeal to the participants in the conflict to refrain from using force. The Yugoslavian government, at a session of its Union Executive Council, said that it favors the immediate introduction of UN forces, which will prevent a renewal of tensions and fighting in Croatia, according to the Yugoslav government. In Pyongyang, the prime ministers of North and South Korea have finished their meeting. They have signed agreements on peace, non-aggression, and cooperation, and also a joint declaration declaring the Korean Peninsula a non-nuclear zone. The ultimate goal of the negotiations is the unification of North and South Korea. The governing Nationalist Party in South Africa lost in the primary elections. Elections were for only whites to vote in. They supported the right-wing party, which seeks to preserve apartheid. The blacks in the suburbs of Pretoria are fighting amongst themselves. In the last day, 7 have been killed and 24 wounded. One of the world's largest aircraft companies, Boeing, has declared that it will lay off 7,000 workers because of the economic decline in the United States. This action by Boeing will probably lead to layoffs by other aviation companies. In the city of Santander in Spain, a bomb was exploded near an automobile. 3 passers-by were killed and 16 wounded. According to the police, this bomb was set off by Basque terrorists of the organization ETA. Mexico City is fighting air pollution. 30 factories have been stopped, and a half of the city's automobiles have been left in their garages. This is the 3rd time in February where the air pollution level in the Mexican capital has exceeded 300 on the World Health Organization scale. New Irish Prime Minister Reynolds is negotiating with political parties, talking about the possibility of a plebiscite on the constitutional prohibition of abortion in Ireland. Recently, the Irish Supreme Court refused to allow a 14-year-old rape victim to travel to Britain for that procedure. This has caused protests in the Irish public. The world lives not by politics and economics alone, but there is also cultural news. Today, there is an exhibition of modern avant-garde art in Moscow today. We don't need to talk much about it. You can look and judge for yourselves. You don't need to know art history terms. You can intuitively feel that the striving of these artists rings very true in our troubled souls today. The artist can make visual contact with his viewer. At this exhibition in the Manège exhibition hall, the star of the show is Viktor Kazarin, who is recognized as the father of Russian neo-expressionism. These paintings are notable for their bright colors and shocking images. Good evening. Our athletes finally finished the men's biathlon program today. The competition in Le Cizé confirms a truth once again. In the Olympics, you can't win by choice, you can only lose by chance. In the 20-kilometer race, the competition turned into a real adventure story. Yevgeny Redkin of Yekaterinburg was our greatest hope. All of our hopes were placed on him. He was the World Juniors champion. He had no misses, which gave him a good chance for the medal. He has nerves of steel. He won the gold medal today. We know that the winner of 2 gold medals at our Albertville already wanted to win the race. That's the German Mark Kischler. He ended up with the silver, and the bronze went to the Swede Michael Levgren. This is the Austrian skier Petra Kronberger, who was the favorite for the gold in the women's slalom because of her performance in the season up to now. Victory for her was a technicality. She won the gold without much competition. The silver went to New Zealand's Koberger. This is not surprising. New Zealand is a main ski center, although it's outside of Europe. In the 10 kilometers speed skating today of the Commonwealth of Independent States were not the winners, but only created the background for the victory by the skiers from Holland, of whom much was expected. They finally won gold today. Berge Feldhalter won, and the Norwegians Johan Olaf Koss and Geir Kovar joined him on the medal pedestal.